Chapter 14. The Mexican government pays millions to Mayo's company. But of course, the dream of any man dedicated to what Mayo does must be to have his own airfield, especially if it operates with government permission so that no one bothers him. Vicentillo's mother, Traitor, operates the airfield called Campo Puerto Rico. It is a strip of pavement located next to the Valle Escondido Ranch, Empresa El Aguat, in the middle of the family's irrigated field, where they grow part of their significant agricultural production. The rustic runway has a storage room with the initials CPK on the roof. The operating code assigned by the Ministry of Communications and Transportation and used for flight planning and radio communication. Man got a government-funded airport. I mean, why wouldn't you, right? I'm starting to think Mayo was the president of Mexico for 40 years. In 2004, during the Vicente Fox administration, the SCT Civil Aeronautics Directorate granted Chaito permission to operate a privately owned airfield after proving its legal, technical, administrative, and financial capacity. It also authorized the company to provide services to third parties, provided they offered domestic air transportation, whether private or commercial. The permit was granted for landing and takeoff of aircraft up to 15 meters in length. In 2016, during Enrique Peña Nieto's administration, Airports Director General Maricruz Hernández Garcia renewed Chaito's operating permit for the runway for the next 15 years, until 2031. The document bore the signature of Vicentillo's mother, who has been identified by the U.S. government as part of the Mayo gang's money laundering network. It also stated that a copy was sent to the Command and Control Center of the Comprehensive Air Surveillance System of Sedena, which is ironic, which has not yet objected to the operation of the runway. It's hard to not think of Vicentillo's stories about how his father hops on and off his own planes and helicopters whenever he wants. What an advantage it is that the government itself provides him with the infrastructure, even the runway. Nothing to see here. Government ain't got nothing to do with these guys. Total disconnection. Government hunts these guys down. They don't pay for their airstrip. They don't give them permits, licenses, and big old checks. They don't do none of that. Of course not. I'll tell you what, if the United States government will help me, I could be a super criminal, super villain. Come on, give me a hand, no? Anybody can at that point. Who can go untouched for 50 years? The guy that has the government paying for his airstrip. What are we talking about here? Establo, Puerto Rico, was established in 2000 before Notary Public Núñez Bedoya. The shareholders are the daughters of El Mayo and Chaito, Maria Teresa, Miriam Patricia, and Mónica del Rosario Zambada Niebla. In 2001, a strange transaction stemming from an alleged debt owed by the company to Rosario Niebla Cardosa of 40.3 million pesos for the acquisition of cattle, agricultural machinery, transportation equipment, and other assets. She was made a shareholder and authorized a capital increase of 40.3 million pesos, thus becoming the majority shareholder, as in Nueva Industria de Ganaderos de Culiacán. As part of the company's legitimacy strategy, Establo Puerto Rico has benefited from the Special Energy Program for agricultural electricity from at least 2012 to 2019. The subsidy has been provided for pumping or repumping equipment located on the El Ajuate property in the Costa Rican municipality, which covers at least 100 hectares. The address on Establo Puerto Rico's electricity bill is an agricultural property located on the main canal at kilometer 16.5 in the town of Laguna Colorado in El Dorado, Sinaloa. This address is on the opposite side of the irrigated crop valley from the airstrip, which gives an idea of the vastness of the property. It's not that Mayo or Chaito need money from the Mexican government, but thanks to the subsidy, Establo Puerto Rico CFE bills arrive at zero. Come on. This guy, he got a lot of hard work to do being a lifelong criminal, It takes some hard work and dedication to do what he did. So if you can alleviate some of the stress by making his airport bills zero, why not? The subsidy was managed by the company's legal representative, Jesus Alfonso Lopez Diaz, identified by the United States government since 2007 as part of Mayo's network. In November 2018, before the end of the Peña Nieto administration, the delegation from the Ministry of Agriculture, headed by Patricio Arturo Robles Luque, renewed the company's membership in the Special Energy Program for 2019, thus obtaining its subsidized rate. Come on, man. They're on it. They're making sure that, they take advantage of all government programs and, anything they can, they probably got SNAP benefits if they were in the U.S., Till Trompito came and cut them off, they would have probably got SNAP benefits. Never know. The National Water Commission, through the North Pacific Basin Organization, also supports the Mayo. They provide water from rivers and wells through the area's irrigation canals to help their crops grow better. For example, they have access to the Nuevo San Lorenzo main canal, whose water comes from the San Lorenzo River, to supply another 100 hectares located in the Quila and Costa Rica municipality. The Quila and Costa Rica Agricultural Producers Users Association provided them with the access to water. They have held a water extraction concession from Conagua since 1992, which was renewed for 20 years in 2000. The concession allows them to manage, operate, conserve, and maintain hydraulic infrastructure and the use of national water resources exceeding 200 million cubic meters annually. Since 2017, Sergio Alfonso Zambada Zazueta, El Mayo's nephew, and the son of his brother Vicente, has been the association's president. That name sounds familiar. I feel like he was just murdered this week. Yes, Sergio Alfonso Zambada Zazueta was murdered on February 8th, 2026 in the midst of the Mayos versus Chapitos war in Sinaloa. As if all this support weren't enough, Establo Puerto Rico was also a beneficiary of the diesel agro procurement support program until 2008. Sergio Zambada always owns Agricolo Zamgon, S.A. de CV, and a company also dedicated to agricultural production. It was established in 2010 with the services of Núñez Bedoya, the head notary of El Mayo's region. Two of Mayo's nephews settled in Los Angeles, California, Vicente Zambada Zazueta and Modesta Zambada Zazueta, better known as Motita. He became known when Mario Lopez Valdez began his term as governor of Sinaloa in January 2011, and he paid for a newspaper ad congratulating him. We cordially congratulate Mr. Mario Lopez Valdez on his inauguration as governor. We wish him every success in the development and progress of our state. Our respect and admiration sincerely, Maria Modesta Zambada Zazueta, Motita, and family. In 2005, Vicente Zambada Zazueta founded Ruby Latino Publications, a publication located at 5712 East Beverly Boulevard in Los Angeles, California, which is no longer active. In 2009, he abruptly changed his business direction and founded Fresh Packing Corp., which offers a broad range of businesses. The purpose of this corporation is to engage in any lawful act and activity for which a corporation may be organized under the General Corporation Law of California, other than banking, trust, or the practice of any profession authorized by California corporations, states the company's articles of incorporation. Registered with the California Secretary of State's office. It is authorized to issue a single class of stock, and the total number of shares the corporation may issue is 250,000. Vicente Zambada Zazueta, Vicente Zambada Lopez Jr., and Monica Zambada Lopez were registered as directors. Fresh Packing Corp. is dedicated to the production, import, export, and sale of fruits and vegetables. I first learned about it in 2013. One of its products brands is called Don Vicente, and its logo features a man with a hat and a mustache with crops behind. Initially, the company had its loading, unloading, and storage warehouses in the heart of Los Angeles at 2183 11th Street. They are currently located at 4333 South Maywood Avenue in an industrial area of Vernon, California, about a half hour from downtown Los Angeles. Although every company is supposedly interested in attracting new customers, this one operates in a very peculiar way. I called several times to inquire about their products, but I was interrogated by a Spanish-speaking man who insistently asked me how I had obtained the company information when the data is public, where I was calling from, and that any information I wanted should go to their warehouses. Listen, man, if somebody calls the front, right? If you got a front operation to hide your money and somebody calls the front, don't get all paranoid and be like, how'd you get this number? It's in the yellow pages, bitch. It's on Google. You know what I'm saying? It's on the internet. Relax. How'd you get this number? Where you calling from? Who gave you my information? You got to relax, bro. You can't forget that the front operation is legit. You can't forget. Just relax, all right? The same attitude was applied to other people I asked to learn more about the company's operations from. Even their website, which was public in 2013, is now closed. And they say that any information should be requested by calling or going to the company, whose lifeline, presumably, depends on the largest sales volume. They don't say what products they sell, where they come from, or who their customers are. Gotta relax. You guys are paranoid. In May 2019, I visited the company's location. I noticed it was a very large trapezoid-shaped warehouse, painted white, measuring 1,958 square meters, according to a rental advertisement prior to its occupancy by the Zambada. Its conveniently flanked by 2 railroad tracks and barely bears a discreet fresh packing core sign on one wall. I could see that they have a fleet of trailers with large, high-capacity refrigerator boxes bearing the fresh packing core and Don Vicente logos on the doors and rear. But when I visited, they were unloading a trailer with the initials JAGV in their warehouse. In 2013, their website stated that they were an innovative company in the cultivation and distribution of fruits and vegetables in the south of that American state. They delivered to Oregon, Nevada, Texas, and Washington. In their public information, they announced, "We've partnered with select producers in California and Mexico from Michoacán, Sinaloa, and Baja California. We're constantly doing our part to expand our producer base. This way, we consistently deliver products of the highest quality and flavor." You can't know what product, what flavors, but just know you're getting products and flavor. "We support the development of our communities in Sinaloa, Mexico. Nearly 400 families benefit and their schools are improved. This is how we work shoulder to shoulder with our producer." The company claims to comply with the regulations of the United States Department of Agriculture and the Mexican government's Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock for importing agricultural products from Mexico to the United States. They are currently enrolled in the Foreign Supplier Verification Program to ensure that their products meet American standards and are safe for consumers in that market. This program verifies foreign food supply. Gotta make sure that work is good enough for our customers on the U.S. side. Our customers got standards over here, you know what I mean? On his Facebook profile, Vicente Zambada Niebla states that he is president of the Costa Rica USA Club, an institution created to support community projects in the Costa Rican municipality of Sinaloa, the land of the Mayo Domingo. According to people close to the family with whom I spoke, the company owned by El Mayo's nephews was a supplier of vegetables and fruits to Walmart, at least in 2013. Motita has told acquaintances in California that they acquire some of the products they sell in the same area where El Mayo has his livestock, vegetables, and livestock production, and that, according to Garciola, it is completely controlled by the kingpin. Right? You can't touch a vegetable in a Walmart without it being connected to these guys at this point. At that point, and this point, and many points before and in between. In 2002, Núñez Bedoya, the same notary who created the Niño Feliz Daycare Center, created the company Colegio Azteca de Culiacán. AC. Beatriz Amalia and Josefina de Jesus Ortiz Hernández appear as the owner. But those who have their children enrolled in the school point out that the person who claims to be the owner is Leticia Ortiz Hernández, mother of Serafín, Mayo's son. She says that on her birthday, the father of her children always gives her a world of red roses because she calls herself the spoiled one. The school is an elementary school with about 200 students and 12 teachers located at 210 Rio Quelite Poniente Street in the Guadalupe neighborhood of Culiacán. Even the neighborhoods, towns, and schools got 15 names. The 2-story building has 6 classrooms, a kitchen, a dining room, a computer lab, a reception area, a school principal's office, a storage room, and 2 courtyards. Tuition is 2,400 pesos per month. They also have another preschool with 82 students located at 225 Rio Quelite Street in the same neighborhood. Frizaza was founded in Culiacán in 2002 by Mónica del Rosario Zambada Niebla and her husband Marco Antonio Zazueta Osuna. Officially, it is dedicated to the purchase and sale, import, export, repair, and installation of refrigeration equipment and appliances for domestic, automotive, commercial, and industrial uses, but also to acquiring, constructing, operating, selling, owning, leasing, and subleasing in any manner permitted by law. All types of movable and immovable property. Whatever. That sounds like a big long blanket that covered up everything. Zazueta Osuna also appears as a shareholder in the company Comercializadora El Chamuco, established in 2011 in Culiacán. It is dedicated to the purchase, sale, distribution, import, export, storage, marketing, and packaging of all kinds of fruits, vegetables, grains, seeds, farm products, agricultural inputs, packaging materials, all kinds of meats, fish, seafood, and seafood products, dairy products, and derivatives, food products, beverages, wines, and liquors. Listen, y'all are better than me, man. For all of y'all that enjoy this book, that are enjoying this book, I appreciate you. Hopefully it has a little something to do with me. Because I think this book is the biggest full of shit scheme that's been pulled. This book should have not been called The Traitor, The Secret Diary of Vicente Zambada, the son of El Mayo, or because this has nothing to do with Vicentillo. This is just a long list of what they owned, what they did. This is assets. This is who I snitched on, what I snitched on about. Again, it just reads off as a fucking list at this point. And I get the point. They're nailing it home how plugged and connected, and how all of these things have to do with his reign, Miles' reign, you know what I'm saying? But maybe it's because my expectations were out of pocket, you know what I'm saying? But when you sell me a book based off the sun and you put a picture of him on it with a clown on it, I expect to hear something about that guy. I expect to hear the story. We're not getting story, we're getting facts. We're getting just the fact. Facts and story, that together, that's a nice little mix. We're not getting that. They are demonstrating how deep and how deep his claws were in or are in Mexico, you know? But I feel bamboozled. Like Chaito's daughters, Vicentillo's children, although they were minors, and their mother, Zintia Borboa Zazueta, were used to open companies such as Rancho Ganadero Las Animas, Multi Servicios Hevis, Zarca de Mexico, and Zarca de Occidente. Hevis is a company founded in 1998 in Culiacán. Its official business is the purchase, sale, consignment, and import of new, pre-owned, and used cars and trucks in general, as well as jet skis, sport and fishing boats, marine parts, and engines. According to Vicentillo's story, these are instruments constantly used in his father's drug businesses. Listed as partners are Zintia, Vicentillo's wife, his sons Vicente and Jesus, Ofelia, and Jose. Zintia was only 22 years old when the company was created and is listed as the sole administrator. In 1999, the shares were transferred to Francisco Salvador Borboa Felix, who also founded the company Autodroma Altata in 2001. Rancho Ganadero Las Animas was created in 2001 to carry out agriculture and livestock activities, sowing, importing and exporting, and buying and selling all kinds of livestock and poultry. Vicentillo's wife and children are listed as partners. He himself was also included. The shares were later transferred to Ofelia and Rosario Niebla Caldosa. Niño Feliz Daycare Center has been operating since 2001 and is located at 2141 Manuel Vallarta Street, Colonia Centro, Culiacán. It has been endorsed by the Culiacán government and the Mexican Social Security Institute, from which it has received the necessary operating authorizations. Of course it did. Remember, they pay for airfields, they pay for daycare centers, they will subsidize your business as long as your last name is Zambada and you come from the line of El Mayo. The official recognition of its validity was given by the State Secretary of Public Education, Antonio Malacón Diaz. This was followed by Ricardo Robinson Bowers, who in 2001, as state delegate of the Mexican Social Security Institute, incorporated the daycare center into the government program, expansion of community-based daycare services. That same year, Robinson Bowers signed the contract between the Mexican Social Security Institute and the Mayo Daycare Center for the subrogation of daycare services. That is, providing daycare services to workers affiliated with the institute, for which the Social Security Institute itself paid monthly. The first contract was signed in 2001 for a 5-year term. According to my research, the daycare center is still operating. According to the Ministry of Public Education, although it remains listed by the United States government as part of the El Mayo criminal network. Since 2001, the Mexican Social Security Institute has renewed its contract to provide daycare services. It operates morning shifts and cares for children from infants and preschool to preschool. In total, it cares for 182 children. I think that's dangerous. I think just anybody knowing that that company exists puts them children in danger. And I think that's an irresponsible fucking... Why? Because I don't put nothing past none of these motherfuckers, man. Babies, old people, innocents, don't matter to them, as far as I'm concerned. So that's a horribly ridiculous business to have. To the authorities, Chaito appears as the owner or legal representative. However, in the documents, the only partners are her daughter, Maria Teresa, and her grandchildren, Maite and Javier, as well as Rosa Maria. As part of the administrative simulations, the property belongs to Chaito, and she rents it to herself, according to the lease agreements I obtained. The legal representative is Carmen Amelia Araujo Laviaga, whom the U.S. government has also identified as part of the Mayo financial network. She, in turn, appears to be the owner of the company Construmalmoles y Granito, founded in Culiacán in 2007 and dedicated to the purchase and sale of construction materials and construction itself, from residential housing to roads and real estate development. When pressure on her increased in 2010, she transferred her share. The daycare center has been a good business for Mayo's family. Perhaps it's karma, but in a way, many of the millions he pays in bribes to public officials come back to him through the contracts that Estancia Infantil Niño Feliz has signed with the Mexican Social Security Institute over the years. Information obtained from the Sinaloa Ministry of Public Education through the Federal Transparency Law May 15th, 2019. According to the contracts during Felipe Calderón's administration between 2010 and 2012, the Social Security Institute delegation in Sinaloa awarded a contract to Estancia Infantil Niño Feliz through a direct award, paying it 2,081 pesos per child served. The daycare center states in the contract that it has a capacity for 2,009 students, meaning the drug lord's family business would have received payments of up to 10.4 million pesos plus VAT over those years. By 2013, under Enrique Peña Nieto's administration, the government awarded them an annual contract for 5.6 million pesos plus VAT under the same arrangement. In 2014, the Mexican Social Security Institute delegation again awarded them a 2-year contract for 13.15 million pesos plus VAT. And again, on December 26, 2016, the Social Security Institute delegate in Sinaloa, Anabel Leyva Almeida, directly awarded the Mayo Family's Daycare Center a new contract, now for a 5-year period from 2017 to 2021 to serve 209 children. On January 6, 2018, Leyva Almeida signed a modified agreement with Estancia Infantil Niño Feliz, represented by Beatriz Edith Fernandez Gastelum, increasing the monthly fee paid by the Mexican Social Security Institute per child. The current fee is $3,773.82, or pesos, It was determined that from 2017 to 2021, the Institute would pay the daycare center a minimum of 18.42 million pesos and a maximum of 46.06 million pesos over that period. Stop talking to me about the government not being involved. These guys are not just making money off of coke. These motherfuckers are making money off of babies. They're making money off of, disposable soldiers. They're making money off of trains, planes, and automobiles. And it seems like the Social Security Institute upped their payment on a regular basis. It's an irony. While the Sinaloa cartel's hordes impose their ironclad rule on Culiacán society, the government leaves the same children in the hands of the relatives of El Mayo, the cartel's supreme leader, who outside of daycare must live in the terror created by the criminal organization. He could oppress your communities, he could tie you to a tree, he could do whatever he wants to you, and he'll take care of your kids. Come on, guys. Sounds like a deal to me. According to information provided by the Social Security Institute, this multi-million-dollar agreement remains in effect today, but whenever this book was published, I'm sure. In the 2012 analysis that the IDA conducted for the U.S. Department of Defense, it identified Mexican businessman Jesus Vizcarra Calderón as one of the likely members of the Sinaloa cartel's financial network. Born on March 17, 1960, in Culiacán, Vizcarra Calderón is a leader of the Viz Group, considered a leader in the agricultural sector in Mexico. Jesus Vizcarra Calderón, a renowned businessman and former mayor of Culiacán, has been associated with Ismael Zambada Garcia, the report states. We already mentioned that in 2010, Vizcarra lost the Sinaloa governorship to Mario Lopez Valdez, although, according to Garciola, El Mayo has supported both candidates equally. You never know who's going to win, who's going to lose. Anything can happen. You want to make sure you hedge your bets. So I put them both in my pocket and see how that goes. The report states, in 2009, Reforma, a Mexican national newspaper, published photos from 1989 showing Vizcarra Calderón and Zambada Garcia attending a religious celebration at Zambada's ranch, El Puerto Rico, also known as Establo Puerto Rico. At the time, Vizcarra Calderón, then a mayor and gubernatorial candidate, declined to comment on the nature of his relationship with Zambada Garcia. Right? Vizcarra Calderón has since left politics to return to his business. Given Sinaloa's ability to corrupt public and private officials, it is worth exploring these individuals and companies with possible ties to the Sinaloa cartel. Additional information is available through classified sources. In 1969, Vizcarra Calderón's parents, José Isabel Vizcarra Rodríguez and María del Rosario Calderón López, founded Su Carne Pacífico S.A. de CV. Vizcarra Calderón transformed it into Grupo Viz, a holding company with numerous subsidiaries. These include Su Carne Worldwide, Viz Cattle Corporation, Sucuero, Renpro, Unidad Industrial de Ganadería Integral Nicaragua, Umibac, Agrovisión Integradora, and Empresa Agroindustrial. Fuck out of my face. Today, Grupo Viz is the leading company in Mexico's agriculture industry. Annually, the company exports $1 billion worth of beef, pork, and chicken to 4 different continents, including the United States and Japan. The company generates nearly $2 billion in revenue annually. El Mayo reportedly boasted on several occasions to his special guests in the Costa Rica and Quila domains that he sells some of his cattle to su carne. Garciola stated that neither Mayo nor his family have had any property secured except for one occasion in 2000 when the matter was resolved quickly. But knowing this for certain is one of the best kept secrets, even in the government of leftist president Andrés Manuel López Obrador. I requested information on the movable and immovable property seized by Ismael Zambada Garcia and his sons, Vicente Zambada Niebla, whether the property was ministerially seized by them or by Rosario Niebla Caldosa, Maria Teresa, Miriam Patricia, Mónica del Rosario, and Modesta, as well as Zintia, Ismael, Leticia, Serafín, Margarita, and Ismael. I'm not reading no more last names of people we've already heard about. The Attorney General's office, headed by Alejandro Gertz Manero, refused to release the information because making it public could cause a profound alteration in a person's feelings, affections, or beliefs, decorum, honor, and reputation. The Specialized Sub-Prosecutor's Office for the Investigation of Organized Crime classified the statement on the existence or non-existence of asset seizures against the requested individuals as confidential. The National Transparency Institute agreed with them. So we don't get to know what they took away from them, what they were able to get back, what their losses were, if there were any at all, is basically what I'm taking. Perhaps the reason for not disclosing the information is another. The same arguments had been given previously to deny information on the movable and immovable property seized by El Chapo and his family. In the end, when the Institute did force the Attorney General's office to hand over the information in that case, they responded that in the last 18 years, the only thing seized from El Mayo's second-in-command, who according to the U.S. government accumulated $14 billion in 20 years of drug trafficking, were 3 watches, a property, 5 firearms, 171 cartridges, 5 magazines, a computer, and 3 cell phones. While the multiple companies of Mayo in Mexico exist without complications, according to the documents that Garciola showed me, since 2008, the family of the capo has tried to remove from the blacklist of the U.S. Treasury Department Nueva Industria de Ganaderos de Culiacán, Establo Puerto Rico, Hamaro Construcciones, Multiservicios Hevis, and Rosario Niebla Caldosa herself through the law firm Berliner, Corcoran, and Rowe in Washington, D.C., but to date has not succeeded. Chapter 15, The War According to Vicentillo. Maybe we'll get something other than a list, or they're going to be like, for this war, they owned 13 do-it-yourself tanks, 15 million magazines for AK-47s, 15 million AK-47s. Maybe we go to it. Vamos. Around January 2008, Arturo Beltrán Leyva's brother Alfredo, also known as Mochomo, was arrested by Mexican authorities. Arturo accused my father and Chapo of arresting Mochomo, which set off a chain of events. Around April 2008, the Beltrans completely broke with the Sinaloa cartel, and a very violent war began between the two. Beltrán Leyva brothers allied with the Zetas cartel, which fought alongside the Beltrans against the Sinaloa cartel. Furthermore, during the same period, the Sinaloa cartel was at war with another of its former allies, the Carrillo Fuentes organization. Because of these wars, which were ongoing when I was arrested in 2009, many people were killed. Because you guys are not good friends. It's the bottom line. You guys don't know how to be friends. You guys don't know how to be business partners. You don't know how to be associates. You don't know how to do that. All you understand is betrayal, power politics, and all the cowardly things that come with it. That's it. You guys don't know how to be good friends or family, even family sometimes. I am aware of many aspects of the violence that has occurred in Mexico as a result of this cartel war. Oh, we're glad you're aware, Vicentillo. A lot of help that does. On January 21st, 2008, the army arrested Alfredo Beltrán Leyva in Culiacán, El Mayo territory. It was a spectacular operation involving around 100 soldiers and multiple armed Hummer vehicles. El Mochomo was leaving a date, traveling in a white BMW with only 3 bodyguards, and was carrying a large shipment of jewelry worth several million pesos. At that time, Mochomo was 37 years old, just 4 years older than Vicentillo. He was the youngest of the Beltrán Leyvas and the one with whom Vicentillo had the closest relationship. Like Vicentillo, he was forced to immerse himself in the family business. Arturo was very close to him. Arturo Beltrán Leyva's relationship with El Mayo and El Chapo had been cooling for some time, and the arrest of El Mochomo was the match that lit the flame. In 2007, Ray was present at the meeting between El Mayo and El Chapo where they decided to start a war. The prelude was the assassination of PGR police chief Nemesio Lugo in Mexico City, which had greatly upset Arturo because he was one of his people. After the incident, Arturo refused to speak to El Chapo, and since there were already several problems with him and Arturo, it was decided to declare war, Ray said. Yeah, Mayo, Chapo, Arturo, all of them, they don't know how to be friends. They don't know how to have good friends. They don't know how to have alliances and be allies. They don't know how to, they never learned that part. Oh, Bashar, they did it for this long. You do it, when you know how to do it, you can do it forever. Well, we talked about the fact that if the war were to break out, there were a lot of people who were dangerous, like Arturo, Barbie, Rafita, and little details like that. It would be a very violent war. That's what I told them for my part. I said I really didn't think it would be a good idea for them to declare war on Arturo, Ray argued during that discussion. And he was right. The worst drug war in Mexican history was about to begin. We have to ask if it fails in comparison to the war that's raging in Sinaloa right now. Worse than the one with the Arellano Felix brothers. Worse than the one between the Federation and the Zetas. There were many signs that war was imminent. Thanks to General Humberto Eduardo Antimo Miranda, Mayo learned that a group of generals in the Sedena were leaving the side of their former partners, now adversaries. General Antimo was my contact in 2007, and I took him to see my father. The general was trying to talk to my dad because there was a rumor in the Ministry of Defense about other generals, and that's what General Antimo said, that there was a rumor that some generals were going to split up. Lascano, the Beltrán Leyva people, and the Carrillo Fuentes were looking to have more connections with other generals, so they could attack my dad and my friend Chapo. In fact, he and other generals had been contacted by Carrillo Fuentes, the Beltrán Leyva, and the Zeta, in order to send them money so they would help them arrest my dad and my friend Chapo. The general had spoken with other generals and told them it was better to look for my father, and it was better to be on my father's side because of who my father was and what my friend Chapo was like, and because of everything that was happening in Mexico with the Zetas and the Beltrans and the war that had broken out throughout the Republic. My father spoke with the general for nearly 5 hours and said thank you. The general said that if he had any more information that might harm my father and my friend Chapo, he would tell us. It was in 2008 that I saw Chapo and my dad together the most in a row. It was when the war with Arturo began, or rather, when Arturo joined the Zetas and the Carrillo Fuentes to fight against Chapo and my dad. Chapo already knew what they were up to. He told my dad to be careful, and all of us too. Juancho and I always went to those meetings, and my dad and Chapo told us they're putting people in Culiacán, the Zetas and Vicente Carrillo together with Arturo, and they were plotting to kill them and everyone around them. My dad told Chapo to let him talk to Arturo to see if he could stop all this, that another war wasn't good, and Chapo said that he didn't want that either, but that it was what they were plotting because Arturo was crazy, and they had put it into his head that my dad and Chapo had handed over his brother Alfredo Beltrán. What my dad said was that Arturo was in a bad way. How could he possibly think that? That's funny too. They'd be like, "What? How could you betray me? Or how could you think that I betrayed you?" Because that's the dish of the day. You people are all fucking liars, man. It's funny when somebody sees a story. Maybe I'll do a story about Mini Leak, or I'll do a story about Vicentillo, and somebody will come and be like, "Oh, he's lying." So what? The other guys are telling the truth? Miss me with the bullshit. That they didn't catch Alfredo because they didn't want him to. That he was always on the streets and wherever. That they didn't need to put him there. My dad said he would talk to Arturo to see if he could stop this war. My dad spoke to Arturo. He asked how it was possible that being Chapo's cousin and a longtime friend of his, things were going to go wrong. What was going on? Arturo told him that it was because they, Chapo and my dad, had been involved in his brother's arrest. But it wasn't against him. It was against Chapo. That Chapo had done this in exchange for the release of his son Ivan, who was in custody. My dad told him stop gossiping, that it was all lies. But Arturo was into drugs, and he didn't like them. Afterward, he'd talk to my dad and say no, that he knew how things had gone with Alfredo, that it had happened somewhere else, and that everything was fine. But a few days later, he'd start talking crazy, as they say here, meaning high or drunk, and he'd say the opposite, saying he was going to kill them and things like that. For Arturo Beltrán Leyva, it was impossible not to think that El Mayo and El Chapo had betrayed him, especially since, while his brother was being arrested in Culiacán, the federal police commanded by Edgar Millan carried out surprise raids on 3 of his homes in Mexico City, in San Angel, in Romero de Terreros, and in Pedregal de San Angel. By the time El Mochomo was arrested, I was already familiar with the operating methods of various cartels, as I was immersed in the investigation into the drug lord. By the time El Mochomo was arrested, I was already familiar with the operating methods of various cartels, as I was immersed in the investigation into the drug lord. I met with them daily, often in Mexico City. For the most part, my informants weren't drug traffickers or murderers, but rather the linchpins between the legal and illegal world that each cartel needs to survive. A source very close to Arturo Beltrán warned me that the drug lord was convinced that El Mayo and El Chapo had betrayed his brother, and that he would never forgive them and would soon take revenge. In February 2008, I published an article in Reporte Indigo in which I reported that a war was imminent. Arturo Beltrán had the support of Vicente Carillo Fuentes and Heriberto Lascano, the leader of the Zetas with whom he had recently formed an alliance. At the beginning of the year, 2008, we began to realize that they were bringing a lot of people to Culiacán and the entire state. They began to hire people and rent houses for offices throughout the city. And since Culiacán is small and everyone knows us, we know when something is strange. They started hiring people everywhere, in the neighborhoods and ranches surrounding the city. And many of the people they hired were already told what they were wanted for, because many people didn't want to and deserted. Those people sought us out and told us everything they were doing or planning. Almost all of them are grateful to my father and to El Chapo, and when they told them they were hiring them to fight against them, many people didn't want to and deserted. They had been told they were going to be paid 20,000 pesos each a month and that they wanted to recruit 500 or more people from Culiacán. And people approached them because they thought Arturo was the same as El Mayo and El Chapo. Since everyone knew about their friendship and since they were Chapo's cousins, many people did approach them, but when they had them locked up in several houses, they told them they were going to go fight El Chapo and El Mayo. Many people deserted. They said they weren't fighting El Chapo and El Mayo, and those people warned us, and that further confirmed El Chapo and my dad's plotting. So my dad called me, and Juancho too, and told us to be careful because they wanted to kill us all. Among the wanted, I was the one on the list on my dad's side and Juancho on the Chapo's side. But my dad said he was going to fight him off, and that he was going to make one last attempt to talk to Arturo to see what was going on, and they talked to him. My dad told me a few days later that Arturo had denied everything, that he wasn't hiring people or anything like that. And well, that was the last time they talked to him. 2008 was Felipe Calderón's second year in office. The Federal Secretary of Public Security was Genaro Garcia Luna, who had already received bribes of at least 8 million from El Mayo and at least another 50 million from the Beltrán Leyva. The head of the federal police was the aforementioned Edgar Millán, a subordinate and personal friend of Garcia Luna. The Secretary of Defense was Guillermo Galván, whose army included some generals closer to El Mayo and others to Arturo Beltrán and Vicente Carillo Fuentes. The same was true of the PGR, whose head was Eduardo Medina Mora. When I learned that a war was about to break out among the members of the Federation, it seemed clear to me that Calderón's government would also enter into internal war. It would be divided between those who were with El Mayo and El Chapo and those who remained loyal to Arturo. Others remained in the middle. My father called me again. He was very worried about everything that was happening. He told me that there was no way out of this, that there had been so much fighting and so many deaths in the last war with the Arrellanos, and everything was so good, and now these people. He told me that he had fought so hard as a mediator to bring about peace, but it was in vain, that these people didn't understand, that he had been one of the mediators months before to get Arturo to make a deal with the Zetas, and that in the end it had been worse, that they all got together to kill him and El Chapo after everything he had done. They like doing that shit. You guys in the comments like doing that shit too. Oh, after so much they did for you, after so much so-and-so did for so-and-so, and then you miss all the betrayal in that. You just look at what they did for them, but you want to overlook the betrayal. That's disingenuous. And it makes your opinion nothing. He told me that the most important thing was family. That Arturo and Vicente Carillo and the Zetas don't think about anyone. They're not interested in anything. But that he does. And he was thinking about what would happen to his family. And then again to me. That he had already fought the other war and now this one again. That I should tell my sisters and brothers what was happening and that they should leave the city, Culiacán, and go to Canada. And others to Mexico City, and so on. I told him I wanted to leave too, that he knew I'd never liked that life, that I was already fed up with living under pressure, a life one doesn't want to live, but that it was getting worse, that now it was different because the government was after me, that it was harder for me. He told me it was difficult for him too, that he never wanted that for us. It's very easy to be a kingpin and not hand it over to your kid. The problem is you felt you couldn't trust anybody else. Why? Couldn't trust anybody. Why couldn't you trust anybody? That's a dog-eat-dog game. That he never wanted that for us and that he would never let me get involved in his business. What? You did. You absolutely did. That's why he was the way he was. To give us something better and an education, and that due to the circumstances, the government was even looking for me. He told me to take care of myself and stay out of it as much as possible, but make sure that those shipments stay out of it, but make sure that the shipments don't suffer. That's your job, remember? Miss me with the bullshit. That he and Chapo were figuring out how to fix me up and get me out of it all and see if I could live a better life and what I'd always wanted. Well, guess what? You living it now. You living it now. Don't fuck up like the other guy. You living it now. But to me, all of this is disingenuous, man. So I told him I was going to Mazatlan with my family. That after all, no one knew that I always moved around there discreetly with my wife and children, and I sent my children to Mazatlan to study. And he said yes, that I should just keep an eye out and take care of myself, and that they had people to fight with, and that I shouldn't get involved in anything. Not only was Mayo in trouble, but President Calderon was too. That would be one of the worst years of his life. He himself was complicit in protecting the Federation. His government used the army and the federal police to fight alongside the criminal group against the Zeta. He received millions in bribes from them, and according to Barbie, even chaired meeting with drug traffickers. That's something we're going to go through on this channel. We're going to break down all of the stuff that, at least the stuff that Barbie said on camera. On April 30th, 2008, the war with Arturo Beltrán began. We knew their intentions months before. By then, they already had many people hired and were allied with the Zetas and Vicente Carrillo. They bought and rented houses in Culiacán and had hired armed men to kill us. And they had planned everything they were going to do in Culiacán. Then Chapo and my father told me and Juancho to have people investigate where the safe houses and armed people were, because they had decided to help the federal police with some raids, and thus they were going to arrest them, right? No snitching, no cooperating, don't talk to the police. Meanwhile, oh, we at war? Cool. Hey, go find out their safe houses. Why? I'm going to serve up them safe houses to the police. That's how we get shit done. The rules ain't for them. They're for you. My father and Chapo did this to minimize the fighting and avoid too much violence. Say whatever you want to say to justify whatever you want to justify. Whether it worked or didn't work, it goes against the code that people have been selling to kids in these streets for 100 years. Because if they sent their own people to the safe houses, the war would have been even worse. There would have been many deaths, including innocent people. And they didn't want that, especially in Culiacán, where they controlled everything. That way, the government wouldn't be too involved. Chapo and my father asked Juancho and me to check all the enemy addresses because we were going to be working with the government and they didn't want the information to leak out. They also wanted to show that they were working without too much violence or death. Yeah, man, we're nice guys, bro. Send the police after. Once we had the addresses, as many as we could, we were to give them to Mr. Damaso, and he would give them to the PFP group. Chapo said he had already spoken with them, and they promised to take charge of the searches and raid. Around April 30th, we gave Damaso the directions. The federal forces were already in Culiacán, but they didn't know where to go. In addition to the directions, they asked us to lend them people to guide them so they wouldn't make mistakes. Chapo lent us some people, some of his people dressed as federal police officers who went along with the real federal police officers, and that day, April 30th, the federal police carried out operations at the addresses we gave them. So listen, so we're in this war, right? Because this guy seems to think that I send the police after his brother. Come on, how outrageous does that shit sound? So now we're in this war, but since we don't want to kill everybody, we're going to send the police to their safe house. We're also going to send some of my guys dressed as those police to their safe house. But we never sent the police to the first guy. That part we didn't do. Stop. I know what you're thinking. That part we didn't do. And I hope you people understand sarcasm. There's a lot of y'all that this shit's going to go over your head, but I can't service everyone. They carried out 5 simultaneous raids, arresting people who didn't resist in 4 of the houses, 6 or 9 in each, and confiscated many weapons and cars. There was a confrontation with the PFP at the last house. It lasted about 4 hours with the army and the PFP, but they finally surrendered and arrested 13 people along with many weapons and cars. That same day, but 3 hours later, there was a confrontation with our people. April 30th is Children's Day in Mexico. I was on the outskirts of Culiacán at a country house I own, celebrating Children's Day with my children, nephews, my brother-in-laws, and other friends. My guards were watching the area around where I was. They were never where I was, but stayed in nearby houses. They were guarding the entrance to the place where I was with my children when they warned me that a convoy of enemy tanks was on the way and that I should be careful. They warned me that there were clashes in the city in several directions and that several people were dead, and that I should be alert in case we needed to move from where we were. Then they called me to tell me that the enemy vehicles were approaching where I was, and about 15 minutes later, we began to hear gunfire around us. I yelled to my children, my wife, and the other women to immediately go inside, and my guards radioed to tell me they were fighting with the enemy. They asked if they were coming to where I was to protect us while we got my family out. They said they had called for reinforcements and everyone was already on their way. I only had 8 people guarding me. Just 2 cars with 4 people each. Their job is just to protect me, and there are other people to fight. In that confrontation, 4 enemies died and 2 of my guards were wounded. More than 30 people were arrested in the raid, and we later learned that some of the dead were members of the Sinaloa State Police working for Alfredo Beltrán. That was the day the war began in Culiacán. That same day, at dusk, several PFP trucks were attacked, and many officers died in retaliation for the raids and the people they had arrested. During those months, all the operations and arrests made by the federal police were because we helped them. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done anything. The federal police asked Chapo and my father for help so they could help them and carry out the operations without so many deaths. In those months, they arrested 100 people from the enemy side and confiscated several weapons. But if they hadn't done so, instead of 100 arrests, there would have been 100 deaths. There would have been more shootouts if we had sent only our own people to storm those places. Sure, okay, whatever makes you feel better, man. You guys did good. You saved 100 lives. Good job. Let's move the bullshit. Members of Secretary Garcia Luna's closest team began to fall like bowling pins in a sting. The loyalties of those who had worked for the Federation were put to the test. The first to fall was Roberto Velasco, director of organized crime at the AFI. I stated in The Drug Lords that Velasco was murdered for his collusion with organized crime. Ray told the story directly. Anticipating the war against the Beltrán Leyva, El Mayo and Chapo not only orchestrated attacks using the PF as an armed force with the complicity of Garcia Luna and Milian, but they also put into action a plan to neutralize the federal police and the AFI agents who worked for Arturo Beltrán. Roberto Velasco was working for Beltrán Leyva, as Ray said. Nacho Coronel informed him that Velasco had told the wrong people that he was going to attack Mayo and Chapo on Arturo's order. Once I spoke with my brother, he told me, "You don't even need to ask me. Go ahead, do that favor," explained Ray, whose godson, Edgar Bayaldo, was deputy director of the PF's Operations Division and belonged to Garcia Luna's circle. El Mechudo's brother asked Bayaldo to locate Velasco. One day after the Children's Day attack in Culiacán, at 6 in the evening, during rush hour in Mexico City, El Muchado, a hitman for El Muchado, murdered Velasco as the police chief was headed home. A bullet hit him directly in the head, and he was immediately declared brain dead, although he didn't die until he arrived at the hospital. When the time came, Mechudo told me, "Tell the bosses that the job was done," Ray said. A couple of days after Velasco's murder, on May 3rd, 2008, Garcia Luna's office announced the murder of 4 federal police officers following clashes in Culiacán. They were members of El Mayo and El Chapo's group who had gone to break into the Beltrán Leyva's house. Manuel Garcia Perez, Victor Hugo Martinez Bravo, Gennaro Francisco Nicolas, and Guillermo Martinez Alvarado. They died last night while bravely and professionally confronting organized crime, a press release stated. What wasn't mentioned is that they died in service to El Mayo and El Chapo, not to the nation. They were honored as heroes in Mexico. What a crock of shit, bro. Dirty cops working for the cartels getting, awards and shit. Service of the peep dog. Sorry, you were a dog. On May 3rd, in the early hours of the morning, Aristeo Gomez Martinez, director of the Federal Police General Staff and also close to Garcia Luna, was murdered in the capital. It was the turn of Edgar Milian, the commissioner of the PF, the same one who sent his agents to Culiacán to serve El Mayo and El Chapo and attack the Beltrán Leyva brothers. Like his superiors, Millan had long had a reputation for corruption. A 2005 PGR Internal Affairs document accused him of being part of the corrupt police network led by Garcia Luna, Luis Caldenas Palomino, and Facundo Rosas at the AFI. He was in charge of assigning positions to assigned agents throughout the country, making him one of the agency's most powerful officials. He was accused of charging drug traffickers, especially those associated with the Federation, between $200,000 and $1 million to appoint a specific regional chief, as well as a monthly salary of $50,000 to $100 for the current general director. Vicentillo's writings amply corroborated this, as did Ray's testimony, who spoke of millions given to Garcia Luna in exchange for appointing an AFI chief in Culiacán. In the early hours of May 8, 2008, Millan was murdered in a neighborhood in the Tepito neighborhood of Mexico City. He was shot 8 times, 3 in the face. The Calderon administration and his police chief, Garcia Luna, spread the story that the Sinaloa cartel had killed him for his work combating drug trafficking. They never said he was executed for working for El Mayo and El Chapo. A lot of dudes went and got medals and shit. They got medals based on the fucking filth and the disservice they were doing to the people that they vowed to protect. Pigs and dogs. That's it. He was given a hero's funeral, presided over by Garcia Luna and Calderon, who stood guard of honor and presented the Mexican flag to his family. Que desgracia. This would have been the Beltrán Leyva family's response to the attack in Culiacán. What a disgrace. That same night, there was a significant loss on El Chapo's side. His 22-year-old son, Edgar Guzman Lopez, fathered by Griselda Lopez, was killed in a confrontation at a Culiacán shopping mall. The media claimed it was the Beltrán Leyvas, but that wasn't the case. It was Gonzalo Insunza, known as Macho Prieto, a hitman in El Mayo's employ. So rather than it being, part of the war, Beltrán Leyva against Chapo Mayo, that ended Edgar's life, it was one of Mayo's own men took him out. There was an order from everyone to stay home because there was going to be a confrontation, Gaciolo told me, confirming the version I recounted in the Lords of Narco. It was said that someone from Arturo Beltrán Leyva's group was going to be around the city club area and was going to meet someone. They even knew the characteristics of the car. Edgar decided to go shopping with his wife and left the radio. He didn't hear the alert. When the gunmen saw the car, someone thought, that's the one, and they opened fire. When they realized who it was, they reported the incident and went to see El Chapo. Along with Edgar, his cousin Cesar Ariel Loera and Arturo Metza Casares, son of the Empress, the financial operator of Mayo, were murdered. Chapo confirmed what they told him. No way, he said. It was a mistake, and that whole group continued working. Macho Prieto was the one who had the most people. He was in charge of a lot of things for my father. He was in charge of about 200 people. What he really liked was transportation and everything related to secret compartments for transporting drugs in pipes and trucks. But he was also very military. He was the one who fought and could enter any place to capture the enemies or those who wanted to harm us. Of all the people the enemies have killed, his people have been the ones who have died the most. Gonzalo was from Navolato, and for some time, he's had problems with the Carrillo Fuentes. They killed one of his brothers, nephews, and other relatives who had nothing to do with the business. People who had their own businesses in order. Some were dedicated to painting cars, repairing auto bodies and garages, and they, Carrillo Fuentes, killed them all. One day, they went to the garage where he spent time, and just because they were his acquaintances, they killed them all, including people who were just there, innocent people he had taken to get their vehicles repaired. Days later, they went to kill his cousins who worked as upholsterers. And that's why he told my father he'd fight alongside them and to leave him alone. But then he was in a very bad situation, heavily involved in drugs, and he was getting very sick. Even his own people were afraid of him. What I knew was that months before I was arrested, he was in Sonoita, Sonora, and Mexicali. My father told me he'd seen him a few days before and that Gonzalo told him he was looking for a way to make some marijuana crossings across the border and that he had the entire government protecting Sonoita and that even the military was going to help him cross the drug. That he already had everything ready and the only thing left was to complete the crossing. That's how Gonzalo handled things. In Mexico City, the murders of drug police officers continued. On June 26, 2008, Igor Labastida, director of the Federal Police's Trafficking and Contraband Unit, was killed. Days later, his lawyer, Raquel Villanueva, a renowned Monterrey litigator and expert in organized crime cases, confided to me that Igor was trying to contact U.S. government authorities with the goal of becoming a protected witness and revealing the corruption within Garcia Luna's AFI and SSP. He had been part of the corrupt group for more than 5 years and was very close to Millán, but complained that Garcia Luna and Cardenas Palomino left him with the dirtiest work. He told Raquel that Garcia and several members of his team had accepted money from all the groups, but only got on well with the Mayo group. At noon, while Igor was eating at a restaurant in the Miguel Hidalgo district of Mexico City, a group of gunmen gunned him down. Curiously, there were no hero funerals for him. Raquel was murdered in Monterrey in August 2009. He died having first-hand knowledge through police and drug traffickers of the deep corruption within Genaro Garcia Luna's group, which I had been investigating since 2007. On October 19, 2008, Edgar Bayaldo and the new PF commissioner, Millán's replacement, Victor Gary Cadena, carried out an operation to blow up a residence located in a wooded area south of Mexico City known as the Desert of the Lion. Arturo Beltrán Leyva and Colombian drug trafficker Harold Poveda, his main supplier, were supposedly there at a private party. Luis Enrique Guzman, brother of the famous singer Alejandra Guzman, was playing music there. Poveda later showed nude photos of her to his friend, bragging that they were having an intimate relationship. The operation was carried out on the orders of El Mayo, as had been the case in recent months. It was a disaster. Arturo was gone and Poveda escaped. The police tortured, beat, and robbed, and Gary Cadena organized an orgy in the jacuzzi of the residence with some of the prostitutes who were there. Bayaldo himself had suggested against it, but the police chief stayed until the next day. The only important person arrested was the Colombian drug trafficker Mauricio Fina Restrepo. Poveda was finally arrested in 2010, of course, in an operation by federal police working for El Mayo, right? He wasn't only the president, he was the police chief for 50 years. Accused of collaborating with the Sinaloa cartel, Gary Cadena began being investigated by Deputy Attorney General Marisela Morales. He resigned a few days later and was subsequently arrested for abuse of authority and protecting El Mayo. I left for Mazatlan a few days after things got really bad in Culiacán. One of the men who had been ordered to kill me had been following my wife for days when she went to pick up my son from school, and they were thinking about picking her up. Kidnapping her and then killing me when I left the house. About 13 people were in a location 4 blocks from my house. They were already following my wife and were waiting for the order so that when they found me, they would kill me. Even if I went with my wife, they would kill us both. My wife never knew this. I didn't want to tell her. The government gave us this information, so I had to be careful in case this information was true and they really wanted to kill us. The government told us the type of car, the color, and which school my wife took my son to every day. They even gave us the license plate of the van that was following her. That's why I took my family to Mazatlan and enrolled my children in school there. During the war with the Beltrán Leyva family, in addition to Macho Prieto, armed groups were led by El Muchudo and Benny. And although Chino Antrax began working with El Mayo in drug transport, during the war he also took on the role of bodyguard and gunman. Double duty. There's another person who also fought when necessary. His name is Luis Miguel, and they call him the Artist. He's part of the judicial police, and at the same time, he's with my father. He has his own people separately. The other one is M1. His name is Manuel Torres, and he also has his people. He has close to 100 people. They also killed his 18-year-old son. Arturo's people did it, and that's why he started fighting alongside my father even more. So there were several coordinated groups. They were all in contact. For example, when someone found a suspicious house or vehicle on the street, they would call each other to see if the house or car belonged to one of our group. If it didn't belong to anyone, that meant they were enemies, and they would start monitoring them. That's how it worked for those who were out on the streets fighting or tracking down enemy personnel. But I never participated in any of those things. That's what they were there for. Yeah, you was a boss. Not the baby. Not the dude that got pushed into the game. You were a boss, bro. I didn't have to be involved in any event or put myself at risk. My father had his people for that. Despite this, I knew them and could give them orders on what to do because you was a boss. Not just a junior, but a junior underboss, all right? As the son of Mayo, of course, I could do whatever I wanted. But I was always locked up in my house looking after myself. And yes, I was aware of many things, but I never killed anyone, and I never participated in any of the operation. No, not personally. You never probably put your hands on somebody, but I think you've copped to ordering hits on people in the name of your father, so please. He who gives the orders should swing the sword. You know? For Ray, the war with Arturo Beltrán Leyva and his allies was much worse, as it became a fratricidal war. I can't give an exact number, but there were a lot of people killed. There must have been hundreds. It was uglier, bigger, he said, comparing with the war with the Arellano Felix and the Zeta. It was a war between our own people, between Sinaloans, between people who were from the same city. So it became something very sad. It's become something very worse at this point. And even sadder because he was arrested on October 20th, 2008. It happened in a middle-class neighborhood in Mexico City during an operation by AFI agents working for the Beltrán Leyva family. They detained him alongside his son, Jesus Zambada Reyes, 22, and his stepson, Richard Arroyo Guisal, 31. Son of his wife, Pat. No one can say that Ray did not fight to the bitter end, as was his custom. He and his men engaged in a shootout for about an hour. In the street were AFI officers and police from the Mexico City Public Secretariat trying to arrest him. On the roof of the house were police officers on Miles' payroll, trying to protect his escape and shooting at the other police officers. Among them were Marco Antonio Valadez Rico, a PF sub-inspector at the Mexico City airport, where Ray was in charge. Carlos Gerardo Castillo, assigned to the AFI's General Directorate of Regional Deployment. Jose Guillermo, I'm not saying all these names, sub-delegate assigned to the PF's intelligence area. And Francisco Montaño, a ministerial police officer assigned to, I'm not even trying that word, TLAL-NEPANTLA. How does TLAL work? Tlalnepantla. Get the fuck out of my face, bro. Desperate, Ray called his godson, Bayaldo, the corrupt police chief of the federal police, who just the night before had been involved in the disastrous operation in the Desert of the Lion. What happened, godson? We're already coming to blows. The Contras are coming to blows, the desperate boss said. I'm coming, godfather, I'm coming, Bayaldo replied. The king and his son Jesus found themselves surrounded on the rooftop of their residence. The kingpin made another call, this time to the capital's SSP. Hey, godson, please send me the Smurfettes, because I don't know if they're the Contras or the government. The Smurfettes, that is, the capital's police did arrive, but they couldn't help him. What happened, godson? What happened? He called Bayaldo again as a helicopter hovered overhead. Desperate, Ray asked Bayaldo for one last favor over the radio. I'm leaving it to my godchildren to take the fall. I won't let them catch me. And if not, I'll kill myself. Ray put the gun to his head, but his son Jesus took it from him and saved his life. Days later, no one could save Jesus after having testified extensively against the corrupt police officers on Garcia Luna's team. He was found hanging with the ribbon tied around his neck in the house of Arraigo, where he was being held under the supervision of the Calderon government. The PGR said he committed suicide. Ray never believed. Ray and Richard immediately became protected witnesses, the former under the pseudonym Rambo III, and the latter as Maria Fernanda. Ray provided information about corruption within the PF. At the end of that year, Bayaldo was also arrested and became a protected witness under the code name Tigre. He testified extensively against Gary Cadena and other high-ranking officials in Garcia Luna's office. On December 1st, 2009, he was murdered in broad daylight at a Starbucks in Mexico City. Garay Cadena, for his part, was exonerated in 2012 and released from prison because the Attorney General's office could not prove his complicity with the cartel. Of course, several years later, another of Ray's sons, Vicente Zambada Reyes, was gunned down in Culiacán as part of the ongoing cartel dispute. And there you have it, chapter 14 and 15 of The Traitor, The Secret Diary of Vicente Zambada, son of El Mayo. I will say, chapter 14 was a complete ball of steaming shit, right? Just a list of businesses, more insight into, yeah, we get it, bro. Tell us they're getting subsidized by the government. Just miss me with the list. Chapter 15, on the other hand, was more what I thought we were going to get from this story. More of what I thought we were going to get from this book. Accounts of the people, what was happening, the thoughts, the ideas, the betrayals. We got to take it all with a grain of salt anyway. So give me the story. Instead of telling me the 6 names of each person that Vicentillo either testified against, spoke on, mentioned, indicated, whatever. That's been my disappointment in this book, that it's a hodgepodge of shit. It's a bunch of things thrown together. You know, it's like a soup of a bunch of shit thrown together. We got an anecdote, a little story, a little personal story of Vicente right here. And now let's go to a list for the next 2 chapters of every business they've ever owned and every person that's ever signed a piece of paper in that business. I'm straight on all that. Tell me about this war. Tell me what the problem was. Tell me how many times Chapo Mayo went to go talk to Arturo and try to talk him off the ledge. That's what I want to know. So I feel there was a bit of false advertising when it comes to this book and the cover and all of that. It has nothing to do with the man. It almost had, again, it's just drowning in detail. The wrong kind of detail. For me, personally. Some of you love it. More power to you. I know when I've been tricked. She tricked me with. Maybe this is what you guys expected out of this, was all that listed information. I wanted something else. Chapter 15, I got no complaint. They got into what the war was about. Those are the stories I want to know. That's what I want to know. That said, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment, tell me what you thought of this episode, and I'll see you right here next time. Peace.